Having network problems. Can everybody hear me?
Can you hear you now? Yes.
Okay. So what I want to do first is to share an example of a cost estimate letter that's issued by Eskom. Okay, this is 2011, so it is fairly old, but I don't think there's too much that changed. But you'll see it. Sorry, it's a fairly hefty document already. And there's basically a little bit of text telling you they've received the application. Important, this is not an offer for a contract, so this is just a cost estimate. Is this big enough?
Yes, no, it's clear on my side. Thank you.
Thank you. So then there's definitions and interpretation. Now, in my opinion, I think it will be good at this point to reference your connection agreement, at least the draft connection agreement, which will also contain all of these definitions. Then, for instance, they specify already what was applied for, which voltage level, what size. And here they make it clear that there are definitely still some information that's not finalized. They told about some of the responsibilities. So, for instance, in terms of the OSH Act. And then there's assumptions and scope. So, yeah, the estimate is based on standard equipment, so there's nothing special about this. Also, I'll show you one of the templates just now, where you can ask for a so-called premium connection, which will obviously have increased costs. And then they tell you what the estimated costs are. Okay, so yes, there's the standard costs and then the premium. Now, Eskom, I don't know, I thought they'd done away with it, but you used to be able to get a premium connection with higher reliability. So before the N-1 requirements, I think, was in the grid code, you could have the standard connection. That's what Eskom provides you with as part of the standard planning. But if you, for instance, wanted higher reliability, they could add, for instance, another transformer in parallel to create at least an N-1 capable network or a firm network. But those customers then usually had much higher connection charges, and even their energy charges may have been higher. Then they explain where the connection charges comes from, what's the difference between the two. There is a connection charge guarantee. And an early termination guarantee. Now, when we chatted to Philip the other day, they don't have this typical early termination guarantee. Now, the purpose of this is, especially if there's large amounts that needs to be spent specifically for this customer, and this used to be for load customers as well. It wasn't just for the generators. When Eskom did the financial evaluation of models, obviously the expected revenue becomes part of this whole application, because just like any company, you have to make sure that in the end, this project is worth the company's while, so that you're not going to make a loss forever. And this is the same here. So if the customer decided after just a few years they wanted to disconnect, then of course Eskom has now, or the distributor, had already spent a lot of money, and now you sit pretty much with a stranded asset. And to prevent that, this early termination guarantee was added. And that reduces after, actually finishes, lapses after 13 years. For that period of time, Eskom requires the customer or the generator to have a safe deposit somewhere at a bank to act as a bank guarantee. Right. So yes, there is the use of system tariff charges. Then it says that you have to apply for the budget quote as well. And Eskom will then provide the budget quotation, which is 85% cost confidence. And they also state a lot of the requirements up there, some legal stuff. And they actually even provide the letter that just gets signed by the customer if they want to continue with this. And there you can see, I mean, 10 megawatts isn't extremely large in terms of Eskom, but even then the cost was already a bit of money. Okay. So the proposal, let me look at the draft here as well quickly. The technical conditions also, that all goes into the connection agreement in any case, which is why I propose that it gets added there. And in this template, I actually have the costs for the Eskom build. That's your dedicated connection equipment, and then the deep connection equipment, so that's your shared network assets. And there's a list that you can add as a list, what are all the equipment that's going to be added, as well as the expected costs. So as an example, let's go back to the previous slide. To just get the correct presentation. All right. So just now we said, as an example, we are going to assume that this is the new generator, and this might be the existing customer's point of connection. So this could be the existing load, and he's just connecting the generator there. Or, of course, it can be a pure generator. So it's an IPP and it doesn't have any existing load. It really doesn't make a difference in terms of the technical requirements. So if we assume that we needed to increase this transformer size, as well as these two lines, what would typically be the costs? So just to show you how you can do that, I'm opening an Excel spreadsheet.
Sorry, Gerard, would you mind just quickly showing
Yes.
on the graphic just slowly which parts needs the upgrades? Your cursor was a bit fast.
Oh, okay. So the proposal would be that this transformer T2, this line L3 and line L1 all needs to be upgraded.
Okay, and those upgrades are because the existing capacity is insufficient to allow for that generator. And this is something that would come from the grid impact study.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
So for the first stage, we are going to say that we did the grid impact study, and it showed that there are certain conditions, typically when the loads are at the minimum and our generation is at the maximum. So let's say it's PV, then typically lunchtime during the day, your load isn't very high, it's not at the peak, and you compare that to the generation, which would be at its peak. And those are the typical cases when you do get feedback back into the network. So for the purposes of this example, I'm also going to assume that we are not going to upgrade the physical lines. We are going to add lines in parallel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this table, just copy it into here. And before we get to the metering, just going to say, okay, well, we are going to need a transformer to add a column. Quantity. So firstly, we need, for instance, say this is a 132 to 33 transformer. So we need one transformer. Then let's assume that in total, these are obviously 132 kV lines, and the total length is 10 and 5 kilometers. In this case, it's going to be 15 kilometers of 132 kV line.
Okay, so just to be clear, this is a medium voltage line, right? Because on the secondary side, it's 33 kV.
Yes.
So internally, they'll also have their own step-down transformers to LV.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so obviously, if you add transformers, you need more bays to be, well, maybe there is a spare bay, but let's assume you don't have one. So that might actually mean extension of the bus bars. It might mean additional bays. The same for the lines. You're going to need one extra bay for the transformer on this bus bar here, one for the line. Then on this bus bar, you're going to also need two more bays, one for this line and one for this line, as well as on this bus bar, one extra bay for this feeder. And on the 33 kV side, you are only going to need one more bay. So that was 132 kV bays, and that was 5 of them, and a 33 kV bay, that was 1. And then, of course, protection and metering, those would be fairly standard. The protection costs might be included in the bay already. Now I'm going to go to my guideline. And can you remember how I got here? Let me quickly go back up to the index. There's a table of contents. Scroll all the way to Appendix A. There's the indicative cost of equipment. So here is a typical cost for an HV bay. That's about, I'm going to, just use that one. So 3.44 million. That's the bay there. 3.44 million. Let's get the formatting right here as well. And the total cost, the unit cost, this one, and then the total cost would just be multiplication. And back to our guideline. HV outdoor feeder breakers, so they're not included in the bay costs. Typically, for the feeder breakers, you're going to need 4. It's probably going to be similar for the transformer bays. There's your HV to 33 kV transformer costs, 33 kV bays. Okay, here they give all building works and common services. So if there's no space, then you can see the difference is quite a bit. So let's use this cost for the 33 kV bay. And okay, the breakers, so for the protection on the HV side, this one. So on the HV side, how many do we need? Let's go back to our network. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, plus the transformer. And that depends on your protection philosophy. Let's add 5 there. And let's look at the lines. Okay, HV line, feeder, and HV cable. So what do you want? Is it overhead or is it cable? Is there anybody in the chat? Let's make it a little bit cheaper. So let's stick to feeder there. HV transformer, that is this one. See if they've got anything on metering here.
Gerard, there's a few that said that they would like to do overhead feeders, go for the more expensive option. But I think the concept is still there. They can always change that.
Cable is the more expensive one. The overhead is typically cheaper. Can you see 7.6 something versus almost 3 million per kilometer.
I see. Yeah. No, there's a Becky and Shara said Eskom likes overheads and overhead feeder. That's what they would propose.
Yeah, it's just much cheaper. Okay, I don't see the actual metering costs in here. Let's just use this LV kiosk, because you will have to have the VTs and everything down to LV in any case for the metering. Just assume it's that. Right. And there you basically have got a very quick estimate of what it's going to cost to upgrade this network for the generator that wants to connect here by adding a transformer and sections of lines in parallel to L1 and L3. Just add it all up. So even ex-VAT, that's already just about 105 million for this customer to connect. Do I need to add the VAT for you as well? I'm sure everybody can do that. And I hope I get a chuckle from some of the audience on that. Any comments, questions? Should I go look at
There's
the
a question
chat?
from France. Does the cost of the line include the line isolators and other peripherals, just out of interest?
Josh, can you remember? I suspect so.
I imagine so, but I'm also not sure, to be honest. Thanks, Franz. I can share the full spreadsheet where these costs come from, and then you can have a look in there.
Okay. So that then, and this letter that I've shared on the screen, what we are going to do, and we'll get inputs from people still, that's to become part of the resource pack, is basically to remove all of this details that you can see here. I would just reference the connection agreement and then just make sure that what is the critical information that we need on this document here. Okay.
Gerard, you still there?
My present. Yes.
Sorry,
See my present.
lost you for the while.
Is the critical information. Presentation back up. Sorry. So the critical information that you need is obviously the name of the project, size of the project, connection point, and pretty much everything that was in the application form. So you can just double check the application form and see if there's anything that's important for the specific application. Then you need to state what is the outcome of the impact study. is what the proposal is, as well then the cost estimate. So those are the important parts that, in my opinion, needs to go into this cost estimate letter. This assumes that you are not going to do the detailed study. The idea is that we then say it's very easy to just quickly say, I think I need to upgrade this. If you then come back and you say, but maybe, let's go back to this picture here. Like I've also said previously, it might be that there is a bigger substation not too far away. That you might say, I'd rather build a 400 kV line from a big substation over here that is actually going to be better for my network. So that's in line with your, okay, I'm obviously using high voltages from an Eskom point of view now, sorry. But just using a higher voltage, more capacity, it creates more capacity for both load growth as well as generation penetration in my network. Then the next thing would be to decide on what is your policy, who pays for what, and this is obviously going to become shared network. And how are you going to deal with it? Are you going to finance it from your side, or are you asking this new generator to pay for it? That's all part of the policies. All right. Any other questions or comments?
See, Becky's got his hand up. Gerard, when Becky's done, would you mind just maybe quickly jumping back to the guideline document just to show where we are in the process getting this information? Okay. Becky,
Right.
go for it.
Thank you, Dr. Porter. Whereas the principle is the same, what worries me is that I'm just thinking the audience, the people who are here. If you check we are not a small municipality. We are a 90 MVA NMD, but most of the municipalities that I know, our neighbors, are small, and like I said, the principle is the same. Is the same whether you do it at the bigger scale or at the smaller scale. It's the same. But I just want to make sure that other people, maybe it must not scratch them, because the principle is the same. Even if you are a 15 MVA NMD municipality, the principle is the same. That's my worry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Becky. So that was not as much a question as just reassuring your colleagues that the principle of what we've just discussed doesn't matter, it doesn't base on the size.
Yes, that is it. Yes, because yeah, I know that in this side of the country, ourselves and the Polokwane are the ones who really would be really interested. I'm saying interested in a very, very respectful way, because that can affect us, but you see, our neighbors might not be.
Yes, but that's common to all people. If you're not sure what to do, then it's very easy to get stuck. That's what Philip also said this morning. Rather get started with something and improve it along the way. And there's a good base to work from with the experience that the SEA team already has. So again, extend that invite for everybody.
And let's not forget from other municipalities and metros that's got experience in this field. So, I mean, what we convey is based on what works in the field so far, or what we get from the field. So, yeah, obviously, just to build on Becky's point, the challenge I have obviously with the smaller municipalities is that they will achieve their hosting capacities, quite quicker. So that's one limitation that they would have versus the larger NMD metros and municipalities.
Yes. Okay, so in terms of the document, I'll just go back up to the index. It's up more. I have to say that's the nice thing of modern technology. It's very easy. You've got the table of contents and you can just click and go there. It's not like a book where you page 18 and now you have to page 18. So to bring this into the bigger perspective, we started yesterday with the Munich processes application and then how to evaluate that application. And as it's written here, there's a proposal to do it in 2 steps to evaluate the application up to the point where you can tell the customer it's going to cost this much for you to connect. Then we jumped to this 3rd section, which contains a little bit of information on tariffs, metering and billing, and then the budgets and the quotes. And these 2 are not much different from the standard processes, but the budgets and quotes is something that I think a few people still feel daunted by, especially from the technical point of view. And that's why we provided some indicative costs. And Josh, yes, I'd also like to look at that spreadsheet. So on the indicative costs, now if we click there, Appendix A, at least we've got something to work from to put the cost estimate together. So you don't need a consultant really to do this. And that's why I just started in an Excel sheet. It's not difficult to put this all together and then copy it into a document. All right, so if you get to the budget quote, of course, these might not be applicable because a 132 kV line and a 66 kV line would not cost the same. They're not that much different, but they definitely do not cost the same. And at that point, it might, if you don't have the in-house capacity, if you don't have the in-house capacity, it might be worthwhile to appoint a consultant who can assist you with all of these. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe if there's no questions, maybe any inputs from Philip in terms of the approach? Something else that you've picked up or saw that we haven't listed or we should not forget about?
It's dropped off for us.
Oh, okay, so, okay. All good. Josh, I don't know if there's maybe something from your side. I think there were some questions just asking, you know, those line items, does it include, I almost want to say, all the peripherals and the
Yes.
consumables around it? I foresee it would be yes.
Yes, it does. I'm about to share the link. It's actually quite a useful tool for this cost estimate calculation. But yes, it includes everything, labor and costs. Yeah.
I can already see a few of the officials using this for other jobs as well, not just for allowing above 1 megs. So that's great. Any other questions from the audience? George indicating the practical implication or time to procure a consultant to assist might be a concern. Yeah, not just the time, but also the process, eh? I know that sometimes the challenge, if utilities need to procure anything, it's a challenge. But remember, this is always something that you can leave over to the developer or the generator to procure. What is important, like Philip indicated, is to at least have a guideline or specification to say if they are going to procure their own meter, procure a consultant. You know, these are the requirements. You know, and this is what we would like to see if such a person is employed. If you cannot do it internally or the time is against you. So that option is there. Okay, any other comments or questions? Otherwise, Gerard, if there's nothing, you can maybe go over to the next session. That would be lesson 6, right? And Josh, thank you. I saw the link now. There's the tool for the assist costing tool. And Josh, we can put that on the WhatsApp as well, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
I don't want to detract from the direction, but shall I just very briefly share screen and just show it for a second for that? It won't take.
Yes, please do.
30,
There's still got time
Yes.
left, and it fits nicely in the topic. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Gerard, actually, I should have thought about this earlier, but it turns out it aligns very well with the exercise you've just done. Yeah, so it's sort of replacement cost tool. Got a generic diagram for a network. I don't think that's obvious here, but this comes from the asset register work and cost of supply studies. But then there's this asset cost calculator sheet where there are where all these assets are asset types, and then in the yellow here you can put just the number that are required of each thing, and then you get a total value out. So I've said here I need 1 incomer, HB Bay, 3 tree. I just shows random numbers, but it calculates it there based on the cost. And then here's also an escalation where you can escalate it forward using to whatever year you're in. And then here are the 3 different costing. So here's the detailed substation costing, and it shows you what goes into each one. So it's including the excavations and all the various labor rates and material costs, etc. And then here's the detailed costing for reticulation, and then here's the detailed costing for the overhead lines. So yeah, I've shared the link, and yeah, hopefully this is useful.
Definitely. A lot of the work already done. Just need to populate the relevant aspects. And then obviously you can always expand the tool. You can adjust the amounts which you know are the true costs, and you can add items as you go along.
Yeah.
But bulk of the work is done, and there's some form of reference. And I think that's what's nice about this tool is that I think that was one of the questions we had in the past is, can you offer cost based on history, based on your data which you've got in the past? And the answer is yes, because sometimes you just want to give them a quick indicative cost so that the developer could say, okay, we're not going to do this. The cost is too high, or you know what, with that cost, it sounds sensible. Let's go for it. So, and you need to get those people off your back, because you are going to get, we work with developers. You are going to get a lot of people asking, what's the cost, what's the process, just to speculate. And they ask like 4 or 5 different municipalities at the same time. So using tools like this will really ease the process.
Yeah, just to say, the prices come from Mutla consulting engineers who do these designs full time, and so that's where their costs come from. But if people have comments on the costs, let us know if there's any big issues. But I think they're based from a very experienced consulting engineering team. So yeah, thanks for that.
Great, thank you, Josh. Okay, any last comments or questions or requests? Okay, Gerard, then it's over to you. Jonathan, if I can ask, could you just switch off your camera